Hi, Betty. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing very well.
Sun shining?
Sun is shining. It's a little cold, but I know we're going to see 60, I think, on Thursday. And just so our trustees know, we are live on YouTube now as we wait a couple more minutes. But yeah, I think people are probably looking forward to some sun and some warmer weather.
Well, my grandsons think that wearing shorts is right around the corner, like next week. I said, not quite.
So, Dr. Cook, we're just waiting for Janae.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
I see, right? We're good. Eric and Francie, you're all set on your end. Video, sound is looking good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess I'm all set.
Okay, excellent.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there. Good evening.
Just trying to switch my view because this looks a little different than.
We're in good shape this evening. We've got Trustee Johnson on the phone and Trustee McDonald. I believe you have your other two members. Actually, I heard from the net. Trustee Anderson is not able to join us, but you do have your quorum.
Okay, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Nanette, can you take a roll call, please?
Yes. Janae McDonald,
Present.
Mary Kate Murin,
Present.
Bill Johnson,
Yeah, here.
and Elizabeth Posito,
Here?
and Alexander Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to kick off with an update from the AUC with co-chairs Eric Warren and Professor Francie Riddle.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. First of all, good evening, and thank you for inviting us to speak with you tonight with an update from our all-unit Congress. My name is Eric Warren. I'm the coordinator of reference and instruction for the STCC library, and I'm the staff co-chair of the all-unit Congress.
And my name is Francie Riddle. I'm a professor and program coordinator of fine arts, as well as the faculty co-chair of the all-unit Congress. This evening, we want to hang up my phone, and this evening we want to review the importance and history of the all-unit Congress and follow that with a report on campus climate.
So our leadership last met with you almost exactly a year ago when we offered our wholehearted assistance and collaboration as we were starting to understand the impact of the global coronavirus pandemic. Those of you that were here will remember that Joris Tapir was faculty co-chair at the time. He's not here tonight. Last summer, Joris was retrenched along with a number of colleagues, leaving the All-Unit Congress in an unprecedented and somewhat precarious position. Fortunately, Professor Francie Riddle agreed to step in as interim faculty co-chair in September, and she just introduced herself. She's joining us tonight as well. In reviewing our notes from last year, we found it striking that many of the concerns we brought to you at that time have in fact remained. Some have even worsened, not only because of the global pandemic, but due to a continued lack of trust on campus. We hope our report today gives you a sense of STCC from an employee perspective. Since we last presented, some of you may be new to the board or new to the Committee on Internal and External Relations, so I'd like to just very briefly give an overview of our All-Unit Congress for you. The previous system of shared governance, the model we were using, ended in 2011, and the All-Unit Congress was chosen as the new system. We represent all employees, regardless of union status, below the level of director. And our previous governance system came under some scrutiny during the last accreditation we had. That was done by a board called NEASC, which is now NECHI. And the NEASC board requested evidence of progress, and I'm quoting here, in assuring the effectiveness of the institution's internal governance, particularly in the areas of fiscal decision-making and planning, to promote communication and provide for appropriate participation of all constituencies, close quote.
So sometimes there's confusion about what shared governance actually is. Shared governance is the term used to describe the process of communication and participation between the various constituencies at a college. So if we imagine a table representing shared governance, the All-Unit Congress represents one leg of the table. The Board of Trustees would be another leg of the table, and administration might be another leg, with student government being a fourth leg, all of those legs holding up the table. We work in a committee system. Issues are typically brought forward to our standing committees, which include a staff standing committee, curriculum, academic, and facilities. Our General Assembly, which meets twice per semester, can advance issues and bring resolutions to the full body. Our most recent resolution, affirming the importance of governance on campus and solidifying our relationship with the board, is why we are here tonight.
So when issues are brought before us, we attempt to resolve them through communication with administration before moving any further. We have the ability to form ad hoc committees when issues arise that don't fit naturally under our regular committee system, much like the board did when deciding whether to bring back the 7 discontinued programs. Our ad hoc committee on campus climate was created in the fall, and they are ready to distribute a survey to members so we can measure morale, satisfaction, working conditions, and trusted administration. However, they haven't been able to administer the survey because we've requested multiple times that we be provided with a mailing list of All-Unit Congress membership. This seems fairly straightforward and simple, but it's been a very serious roadblock to our communication and organizing efforts.
So before we move on to All-Unit Congress specific issues, we want to take a moment to highlight a few positive campus initiatives that our members have been instrumental in. Many of our members are part of a separate organization that Trustee McDonald is part of, and that's called the Anti-Racism and Inclusion Alliance. The AIA has been working to reform hiring practices, among other very important initiatives. We know that our students would benefit from having more people of color employed at the college, but instead we have seen many colleagues leave the college. We expect the administration will embrace the advice given by the AIA consultants and use every effort to ensure that our employees better reflect the makeup of the student body. We would also like to highlight the Campus Repopulation Work Group. because we've been really impressed with campus efforts to support faculty and staff working remotely during COVID-19. And the Campus Repopulation Work Group is working very diligently to ensure that campus is safe. The group has inspired confidence that we will also be fully supported once we begin transition back to on-campus operations. Our last highlight, which is not directly related to AUC, but is integral to what we do, is online learning. When the pandemic struck, our campus made an early decision to support quality online education with the Center for Online and Digital Learning. This gave us the tools to build fully online classes during the pandemic that students could depend on, rather than worrying that a positive COVID test could send us all home to another remote learning situation. However, we really are looking forward to the day when online instruction is a matter of choice for faculty and students, and not a situation mandated by the challenging conditions we're all under. We believe almost everyone agrees that a hands-on learning, instruction, and guidance, which is unique to technical institutions, is accomplished more thoroughly when faculty and students can meet face-to-face.
So in preparing for tonight's presentation, which we hope will be part of an ongoing relationship with this committee, Francie and I hosted virtual open office hours and encouraged and received feedback from members of the All-Unit Congress. We believe that asking for input before decisions are set in stone is what shared governance is all about. Shared governance is effective because it's about being open to input. We received feedback that focused on a broad array of issues at the college. And one consistent thing we found is that campus climate was at the base of almost every issue. We recently were alerted by a faculty member that no one had been assigned to the position of the ADA coordinator since a member of our human resources staff who assumed this important responsibility left the campus almost a year ago. This position is required under the Americans with Disabilities Act and is responsible for ensuring that STCC is in compliance with state and federal disability laws and regulations, and that there's equitable treatment for the campus community seeking accommodations. We didn't hear from administration about our concerns. And finally, at a face-to-face meeting, we were able to determine that someone had taken that responsibility on, which was good news, but we're still not clear as to whether this information is known by the campus at large.
The all-unit co-chairs are very appreciative of the Board of Trustees' decision to reinstate 5 programs. Thank you.
Excuse me, Francie, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to get some clarification, Eric,
Absolutely.
from the statement that you made. So in fact, there is an ADA coordinator.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
That's our understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we are really appreciative of you all for your decision to reinstate 5 programs. And we know that there's widespread support among our members to also reinstate the automotive and cosmetology programs for the start of fall 2021. We understand for that semester. We understand that the board has yet to release the funds for the feasibility studies for the 2 programs. And in recent discussions with our CFO, Andrea Nathanson, as well as President Cook, Academic Vice President DeBurley, and Vice President of Human Resources, Casey Senni, we without hesitation urged the reinstatement of all programs, the recall of all faculty, and we also urged that every effort to support the suspended programs be taken. If guidance from the federal government allows COVID funds be used to upgrade facilities, we would urge those funds be put to that good use to reinstate those programs. We've heard from AUC members that they are concerned that the programs might not get the support that they deserve to get back on track. And so we were truly glad to hear from Dr. Cook in a meeting last week that the process is going on in earnest, and the only holdup in getting the programs back up and running is that the Department of Higher Education needs to be formally, the Department of Higher Education needs to formally reinstate those programs after the data is collected by STCC administrators. Another worry was raised when administration used quotes from the program reviews that had been that had been written by department chairs to justify program closures. Chairs had been assured during the program review process that this was an opportunity to advocate for their departments, but the advocacy was turned against them. Cultivating a process of reflection and improvement is the heart of the assessment process, which department chairs put their trust in. But instead, their words were used to defend the cuts. The decision has effectively broken the trust in the program review process.
The lack of trust between our membership and administration is palpable and real. It's only when anonymity is assured that issues can be confidently raised. We'd be derelict tonight if we didn't mention earlier votes of no confidence and the resolution that we sent to the full board last August that expressed our dissatisfaction with upper management. At that time, we asked you to use your powers under DHE guidelines published on page 11 of the guidelines and procedures for the search, selection, appointment, and removal of state, university, and community college presidents. These previous votes were done in good faith and out of a commitment to our college and a true belief in our mission. In spite of our best efforts, the situation hasn't changed. The decisions like the retrenchment of our previous faculty co-chair, Joris Tapier, and the closing of the 7 programs have reinforced and exacerbated a campus climate that needs examination and review. Once the mailing list issue is cleared up and we are able to get data on our climate survey, we really hope to report back to you with some solid information taken from that instrument.
Yeah, sorry, Eric, may I just interrupt? It's Mary Kate.
Yes, Mary Kate, hi.
Hi, when have you requested that mailing list from the college?
We have.
And when was that?
Boy, I'd have to really go back in the memory banks.
The
It's
way
been an
that-
issue, and my recollection is that administration actually raised it, knowing that our membership, which numbers, it's a moving target, but around 800, did not have that many members in the mailing list. And so for accuracy, they had suggested we get that taken care of. It's been many months.
Yeah, I think it's
and I know it's a difficult process. It requires sort of merging various employee lists given by the state and payroll and whatnot. And I know HR has had some turnover, but it has been requested, yes.
Okay, because I think that's important for the committee members to realize is that it's not just something that is easily pulled, right? It is something that multiple agencies need to put together. So just want that fact out there. Great, thank you.
For clarifying, right.
Excuse me, this is Bill Johnson. Can I?
Yes,
can I
Trustee Johnson.
You mentioned, I'm trying to follow this, and you said the program administrators wrote a narrative, what was needed for their programs to continue and continue properly. And then you mentioned broken trust. Was there anything inaccurate that was reported out of those narratives, or you just don't like the fact that the report was used for the truthfulness that was involved, that was within it? I'm a little confused there.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the purpose of the program reviews, I happen to be in the same cohort with the programs that were discontinued. And we were told repeatedly to say whatever would make our programs better, not what would help our programs survive, but to advocate for a better program. So that's what we did, not realizing that the programs were on the cutting block. And furthermore,
Okay.
there were, I'll let you, I just want to finish the second part. There were things that simply weren't true in the ad hoc committee meeting in which there was a long presentation that described all of the justification for the program cuts. There was information that was not true.
I just want to note, and it's no secret that I was in support of restoring the programs, but I do just want to note, for the sake of your updates as well, the phase that we are at with restoring the programs and the barriers and challenges that we have overcome regarding, your interpretation of the misrepresentation of the information. And so I just think it's important for us to continue to move forward with the positive fact about, we are in the process of making that happen, versus continuing to go back and forth over some of the discrepancies that we've already made a decision on.
I really
Acknowledged.
appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
This is Bill Johnson, and I agree with that, but also we need to clear up any muddy waters if it relates. To me, coming from a business owner standpoint, when I ask somebody to do a report on their division or whatever, it's just a report on the division, but it seems like in the academic here, it's you have to be careful with your verbiage and say, well, what do you need? Not what your wish list. So it sounds like some people might have wrote a wish list and it was used against them. I don't know, but it just seems like I just a little confused. I mean, to me, a report's a report of what you need, and I don't know. That's why I guess I'm having a little disconnect on that. But thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. We want to look forward. We desperately want to look forward. And I think the program issue keeps coming up because it does illustrate a lot of the systemic problems that we have at STIC.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your update?
I have just one very short little paragraph.
Okay.
And then we'll take any other questions that you have, or if our time is up, then we're happy to close. So just to wrap up, we want to just repeat that our last accreditation did note deficiencies in campus governance. We hope you'll pay attention to our concerns. We don't want that to happen again, obviously. We run across a quote attributed to the Harvard sociologist David Reisman. He said, "The job of the trustee board is to save the institution of the future from the actions of the present." That's a provocative statement, but I think it reinforces our hope that the board is tuned into to the issues we presented and you're prepared to hear our concerns in the future. So thank you so much for your attention. We really appreciate this opportunity. And if there are any further questions, we're happy to entertain them. Thank you.
Just one comment, if I may, Trustee McDonald, is I think, Eric and Francie, you are aware of the 106-page accreditation proposal that was put together that had a lot of input from the Board of Trustees and commitments that we made as trustees moving the institution forward. As Trustee McDonald has mentioned previously, there are commitments there for shared governance. This is one step that we continue to have you part of the internal and external relations committee. So I just want everyone to, and I'm sure you've read that 106 page, just like everyone has here. And Trustee McDonald and Trustee Esposito, we were part of that, those commitments, those projections. So just want you to be aware of that. And this is a good first step for Trustee McDonald and her committee, moving the institution forward that we've already mentioned, and get to really what we need to do is make this a better institution for our students. They come first, and then all of us are kind of in the back seat. So part of the car, but in the back seat. Yeah. But thank you, Trustee McDonald, for the time.
Thank you for reiterating
Thank you, Trustee Moran.
And if that concludes the presentation, I would like to move on to the next part of the agenda. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Next, we're going to have Vice President of Student Affairs, Darcy Kemp, give us some highlights and initiatives.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald, and good evening. Tonight, I'm excited to continue the conversation about the Success Funds, and in particular, STIC's plan for the Male Initiative for Leadership in Education. Next slide, please. You'll see a graphic here, which was also provided in the attachment that came with the board pack. And this is degree attainment by race and ethnicity and unmet needs status. So you can see system-wide, white students with need met have the highest degree attainment rate, followed by white students with unmet need. Students of color have substantially lower degree attainment rates, even if all their financial need is met, suggesting that addressing affordability gaps alone will not be sufficient to achieve racial equity in success outcomes. So the Success Fund stands for Supporting Urgent Community College Equity Through Student Success. And the Massachusetts Community Colleges asked for the creation of this Success Fund for community college students. Next slide, please. You can see through a system-wide commitment to equity, the goal is to significantly raise the access, attainment, and long-term success outcomes among underrepresented and minoritized student populations. The goal of the Success Fund is to target solutions through investments in wraparound supports and services to improve the student outcomes. And you can see I've listed a couple examples of what wraparound services could look like. Next slide, please. So the Success Fund does have a coordinating committee. There's a leadership team as well as a committee that has representation from all 15 Massachusetts community colleges. We met last week for our first meeting, and you can see the agenda is listed on the slide here. What we really did was take a first look at what each institution is doing that is successful and how we might scale that and then measure success. So we really talked a lot about what each of the institutions is doing well and how we might stand up a program alongside of what we're doing well. Next slide, please. As a reminder, from January, I talked about TRIO Student Support Services and our male initiative for leadership and education. And so that's STIC's plan. What we hope to do is take all the great components, the program outcomes, goals, academic supports, as well as the wraparound services that help our TRIO students be successful, and apply that same model for our Black and Latino males. And if you recall in the data that I shared in January, that was where we saw significant need for our new student population coming out of high school. Those were the students who ended up applying to STIC but not enrolling. So our hope is that through this MILE program, we can really create the support, the structure, and the scaffolding that our Black and Latino males need to be successful. Some of the other things that we're considering is an extension of the contract with our equity consultant through fiscal 22. Our hope is that once we conclude our equity audit, we can continue to work with and through the AIA at STIC to then work with various departments throughout the institution on identifying what it was in the audit that we could address through systems, policies, and practices. We also hope to support professional development opportunities and other proposals that come through the AIA. We're at a phase now where we are finishing up the job description for our director of MILE. So it's been a collaborative process that the AIA members have had an opportunity to discuss and to also work with student affairs and human resources. You can see a few of the bullet points here for the full-time director. You can also see that there's going to be an integration between the connection through community partners, through K through 12, really providing an entryway and pathway to the institution. And then while the students are here, providing that consistent academic support and wraparound services. So there'll be an intense collaboration between admissions, faculty, academic affairs, academic support. And so through AIA, we'll continue to have conversations about what model would work best for our institution and for our students. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you can see some of the academic support considerations are things like meeting with an academic advisor to establish a student success plan, meeting bi-weekly to review progress and make adjustments. We will also consider some summer bridge opportunities based on identified needs for the students. And some of the ways that we can do that is through something called the LASI, which is the Learning and Study Strategies Inventory. So we hope to, again, be able to take what we know works well in a program like TRIO and apply that to MILE. And we're also looking at dedicated tutors, supplemental instructors, and wraparound support considerations could be things like a tech pack was an example of something that another institution had said, where you're going to give the laptop, the books, the technology, Wi-Fi access, everything that the student needs to be successful. Assign peer tutors or peer and professional mentors to meet regularly with student participants, and then ongoing professional development workshops and programs, community networking events, job and career exploration and scholarship opportunities. I've listed on the right hand of the slide here what our outcomes are for TRIO. Now, this will be a great starting point for the director of MILE, myself, and others to work with the director of TRIO to determine what are the outcomes and goals that we want to establish for MILE. So while this is successful outcomes for TRIO and the goals that they have set, we do recognize that we could kind of ebb and flow and establish some different participant outcomes for MILE. Next slide, please. Thank you. And the last slide here just kind of gives you a timeline of our next steps. So when we hope to extend the equity consulting contract, that will continue to support ongoing proposals and initiatives submitted with and through AIA, and then the timeline for hiring the director for MILE. So I can tell you that everyone that's been involved so far has been really excited about this initiative and are getting more excited now that we are about to launch a search for a director. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hello there. This is Trustee Johnson, Trustee McDonald. You gotta give me. I'm trying to wrap my arms around this. I'm reading it, and they got white, African American, and Latinx. What happened to the Asians? Where do they get mixed into? Or hello?
Yep. Hi, this is Darcy, Trustee Johnson. How are you? Good evening.
Good. Good.
The source for this data is from the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education and the National Student Clearinghouse.
Correct.
So we can pull particular cohorts of students, and I'd be happy to inquire as to whether or not we can include other race and ethnicities in this overview as well. This is what was used by Massachusetts community colleges in their ask for the funding for the Success Funds.
All right, so this is something you have to use their data to get their grants.
I think I might let somebody else who has a little more experience
well,
with funding answer that one.
Well, where I'm going with this, and I guess I apologize, I'm a little rough around the edges, but so if a Russian immigrant who English is a second language, they would get mixed in with the white, whether it's met needs or unmet needs, correct?
I could see Darcy's looking at me. Let me jump in. So, you know, one way that we talk about this, Trustee Johnson, right, is depending on the lens we use. So in this case, the lens was race ethnicity. We didn't necessarily use the cultural lens.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to figure out, President Cook. It seems to me is to get a truer picture of how students are doing. To me, it should be if their English language is primary or secondary, and see if that's where the students with the English language being secondary, if they're the ones that are falling behind, right? That's where you need help, because I mean, you could have a white student who's immigrated from, you know, one of the Eastern Slavic countries but they get put in, you know, and then when you add the two together, the African American and the Latinx, the percentages come out higher. I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my arms around this. I guess
No, they're appreciated.
I look at things differently.
No, they're appreciated points because these are conversations all of higher education is having. I know our Anti-Racism Inclusion Alliance is discussing them, and it's the idea of all these multiple lenses, because what that one chart sort of brings together is sort of race, ethnicity, which is problematic because people, it's not always helpful when people have to be boxed in with what their choices are, right? Further, it's trying to add in socioeconomic status, right? So what does household income look like? And that's all complicated and fraught. I think the conversation for us,
and that's where I'm going with this. It seems like, you know, I understand they're just using information given to them, but it just, to me, it'd be better to look at the income levels of the family versus the success rate, whether the English is the primary language or second language versus their success rate. And that's where I'm going with all this. And then you can solve things, you know, if somebody needs more help, more assistance, you know, instead of just putting everybody in a colored silo or I don't know. I just have a hard time with stuff like this too. I don't see what it solves. I really don't, but it just creates more issues and more, it's not solving anything, you know, because it really depends upon whether they're primary English or not, or how the family income, and, you know, anyway, so it's basically information given to them they got to use to get a grant. That's basically what it is.
Before we move on, I just want to add, you know, considering what you said, Bill and Dr. Cook, feel free to jump in, but what you brought up is a valid point about the other considerations or subgroups within students that choose are able to select white as their race. But even with those sub considerations, Bill, the numbers are showing that those white students, whether they are immigrants or not, are still outperforming and are still more successful with their graduation rates than their counterparts that are being compared against, right? So I understand what you're saying because I ran an ESOL program for many years prior to being where I'm at. But what I'm saying is even within that subset of, you know, those students that are selecting white as their race, they're still having higher graduation and success rates. And so therefore that shows that there is something else that needs to be examined outside of that.
Okay.
But thank you for raising the question.
Just one more quick comment. So Dr. Kemp, you mentioned the academic support and the wraparound services. Just want to make sure of where we are present state and potential need for additional resources, whether that's bodies or people moving forward, and given the numbers that we're talking about to properly prepare for this. So if you could just let us know where we stand with there.
Yes, thank you. So the Success Fund Coordinating Committee, the leadership is doing inter-service agency agreements. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but they will let us know how much of that funding will be awarded to each of the institutions. And then we determine sort of how we're going to use that in our institution and what measures and how we're going to measure outcomes, how we're going to measure success. So each institution really does have the capability to structure the academic supports and wraparound services around their identified student needs. So we have actually identified funding for the director of MILE through the institution. It will not be a grant funded position, but we are looking to use success funding for things like peer tutors, peer mentors, supplemental instructors. I apologize. So, and then for things like wraparound services, it could be transportation stipends, it could be PVTA bus passes, you know, so again, it'll really depend on what it is that our students need for support, and we will be able to use the success funds to, you know, support students accordingly. Some of those will be for that participant in that moment. like a math code, for example, for my math lab, that would be unique to a particular student and participant. But we could also use success funds to do things like purchase laptops and Chromebooks as part of a digital equity library loaning type of program as well. So I'm really excited that we have the capability to put forth something that we have identified as a need for our institution, and can do so, based on our data.
Great, thank you.
This is Trustee Esposito. I just have a quick question, Darcy, regarding the first meeting that took place with all the community colleges together. How do you feel that STCC fared, and how did we look with what we're doing with what everybody else is doing or done or plans?
Given that this is being streamed live, I want to make sure that I acknowledge my counterparts at other institutions are doing really great work and are coming up with wonderful ideas. But I have to say, I think we're a little ahead. We've looked at our data from fall, we've identified a very specific cohort and a very specific program. And many institutions are still in a phase of kind of taking a look at their data and looking at the programs and the supports that they already have in place and how they might scale those particular initiatives, where we're really taking a model like TRIO and we're standing up something quite unique.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In short, internal, external, you have much to be proud of. Truly.
Okay, now we are prepared to move on to our human resource update from Dr. Casey Sini.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay. And well, I'm delighted to give you an update of both the Office of Human Resources as well as the Campus Repopulation Work Group. And there's been a lot going on. As was mentioned earlier in the AUC presentation, there has been a lot of transition with the Human Resources Office. And in fact, we've got quite a new team. We have John Harmon, who's our new Director of Human Resources, myself, I started in May, Vinach Sin and Tiffany Love, they are HR generalists, and Staff Assistant Madeline Torres. We also have Wendy Author, but she's on leave. So we don't have her actually, but she's on leave and still part of the team. So I just want to take a moment and let you know that even though we are a new team, together we represent over 20 years worth of community college experience and human resources experience that includes UMass Amherst, Springfield Public Schools, Beverly Public Schools, the food service and criminal justice system, and both the private and public practice of law. And I have to say, one of the first things we did when our team finally came together in January, John Harmon started in January 26th, and on the 29th, we had a retreat to develop our work plan. And our work plan is exciting. We came together to talk about what are the priorities of the Human Resources Office. Next slide, thank you. The first priority is to reaffirm, but also reimagine our office. And this gets to one of the other points raised by Francie and Eric, and that is, HR is really the grand central of the entire institution. Everything that happens really comes through HR. And in fact, we're lucky enough to have 3 databases that we work with. We have HR CMS, which is a state system, that's for the hiring. We have DataTel and Colleague, which is an internal database. And we have Interview Exchange, which helps us bring in new employees and hiring. As a result, having those 3 databases, it's not always easy to disaggregate, collect, and analyze data. So we're working on that. And one of the priorities is to, in fact, reimagine how we do that. And so I'm quite sympathetic with the requests that have been made, and we are working on them. And we're getting closer, and I can assure both the trustees as well as my colleagues at the college that each one of us is committing to make sure that we are getting the information that is being sought. Our second priority is kind of exciting, and that's to demonstrate a commitment to equity. to ensure recruitment and hiring practices are effective, consistent, and equitable to enhance the diversity of STIC faculty and staff. This priority is very consistent with the goals of AIA, as well as our self-study projections. The third priority, prepare an aggregate view of the college-wide professional development efforts and opportunities. There are a lot. And we're examining, once again, what's happening on the campus, but that's an area that we'll be developing. And finally, improving the health and well-being of all Springfield Technical Community College employees. That's huge. COVID especially has presented tremendous challenges with remote work, with health and well-being of our employees, and we'll be working closely with our vendors, our healthcare vendors, to make sure that we get support for our employees, and also work on exciting initiatives for them, professional and personal development. Next slide. One of the things we're doing, we are anticipating the AIA equity audit, but we can't stand still waiting for that. So we are trying to anticipate what could happen. And we're examining right now our recruitment and hiring processes. We are asking for input on where to post jobs. And we are also looking at our job descriptions to make sure that they read with a more equitable lens. And in fact, most recently, we have inserted one of our core values, the core value of respect, into interview exchange. It appears on the About Springfield Technical College. So it will appear on every job posting. And I like the statement. First of all, it's been adopted. Everybody's familiar with it. It's one of our core values. But secondly, it's as close as we can get right now to equity. We don't yet have an equity statement. AIA is working on one, and they've made tremendous progress. But respect, we nurture mutual respect among faculty, staff, and students. With respect, we embrace differences to create an inclusive environment for all. That's a great statement. And as I said, it's almost a placeholder for what equity statement we will have. But I'm very pleased because both the subgroup that I'm on with AIA, the HR and IT subgroup, as well as the full AIA committee, agreed that that should be a part of our job postings. And I'm delighted that's the case. In addition, we've now expanded our thought process around the whole search committee process. So we include a TED Talk, equity versus equality, and 7 implicit bias videos for each committee that is convened. And these are helpful. And we've had some good feedback about that. When you go into the search process, you may not think that you've got implicit bias, but these videos do point out that we all have biases. And if we're aware of them, then we can be careful about them. I've also sent out a campus-wide invitation to serve on search committees. When I prepared the PowerPoint, 37 people had responded so far. To date, 45 people have indicated that they would like to be asked to be on search committees, which is wonderful. What we will be doing is when people are seeking, the deans, the directors, supervisors, hiring managers are seeking to post a job, we will have a link to that list so that when they're convening search committees, they'll ask this ready group of people who have said, yes, I'm interested. We have said that the hiring managers will ultimately decide upon who is the right person for the search committees, because they have to have familiarity with the job that is being posted. And also supervisors have to sign off and make sure that the employee can serve in that manner. But what's exciting about this is these are folks who said, yes, I want to be a part of a search committee. And so it is hard getting people to, I've conducted several searches since coming on board. And you really go on bended knee saying, would you be willing to serve? Well, now we've got a ready pool of people who are more than willing to serve, and we'll be following up with them. Next slide. As I indicated, we are very much aligned with AIA, and they've sent a request to the Human Resources asking us to analyze recruitment and hiring data over the last 3 to 5 years. We'll be able to go back 5 now that the team can do queries in HR CMS, which, by the way, was a task they were unable to do until last week. We'll be analyzing the full-time adjunct faculty, MCCC, professional staff, AFSCME, and NUPS. We're going to be analyzing the number of applicants, and we'll disaggregate them by race, ethnicity, and gender, and then look at who's been hired. So also we'll be doing the same with retirements and separations over the past 3 to 5 years. Interestingly enough, we are getting requests for this not only from AIA, but other areas of the college. So we know that this information is, that the campus is thirsty for this information, and we expect to quench that thirst. Next slide. Oh, before I move on to repopulation plan, is there anything that I can answer with regard to my office, participation in the AIA, and anything else before I move to repopulation? All set?
Thank you.
Okay. With regard to the repopulation plan, we are still moving along, steaming along. You know, we've since June, we're meeting twice a week. We scaled that back a little bit with the spring semester so that what we have are on Tuesdays, we have a case management team subgroup that meets, and then on Fridays, every other Friday, we meet as a full group. And we've continued to use the healthy roster screening to clarify steps for COVID exposures, to begin discussions about the fall semester. I do want you to know we did apply to become a vaccination distribution site. That was not going to happen anytime soon. We fear that the vaccination sites have been determined to be large distribution sites, and we don't have the capacity. One of the ways to become a vaccination site is you had to guarantee that you could use all the vaccines that you were allocated, and we could not guarantee 1,500 vaccines per week. We just couldn't. We did a survey, the Health Center for Health and Wellness did a survey, and we got back close to 148 or 58 people that said that they would be interested. And you know, it would be unfair for us to try and take vaccines if we in fact couldn't use them all. So next slide. This is where I referred to the vaccine program. You know, it would have been wonderful if we had been able to do it, because our nursing students, our clinical
You're muted, Casey.
Had we been able to become a vaccination site, our nursing department was ready and willing to have their clinical faculty and students help us distribute the vaccines. Unfortunately, it does not look like that's going to happen. And so it's a waiting game. Now, of course, we've just heard that there's another vaccine out by Johnson & Johnson. Who knows? We watch it weekly to see, you know, what changes and updates are expected, and we'll be adaptable. If for some reason we can get the vaccine, we're ready for it. Okay. Next slide. Here are key considerations and actually almost subgroups of the full work group, which consists of about 25 people. We're going to divide up so that we can handle preparing for the fall semester, actually the the summer semester and fall semester. So here are the things that we have to think about. We absolutely have to be up to speed with state guidelines and what's changing. Just recently, today, the CDC issued new guidelines with regard to people who have had the vaccine but exhibit COVID symptoms, and those who do not. So we've got to watch this daily. Class schedules. We have to look at the buildings, the rooms, the class times, student lounges, vending machines, food services. This has to be taken into consideration depending on the gathering limits and the space requirements that the Department of Health is going to insist upon. Cleaning and sanitizing. You know, this is what we've been doing. We've had a good stretch. We've done a good job with this. And you know, we'll see what happens when we get more guidelines from the state as to whether or not we can increase the amount of people in a space, in a classroom. The STIC squad has done a marvelous job. They've kept us safe. We're going to be expanding the STIC squad locations, which means we'll be bringing back more part-time employees. On-campus testing is going to continue. The Department of Public Health has indicated even if people have the vaccine, we should continue to do COVID testing. Decisions still need to be made about student services and STIC resources, the library, bookstore, Chromebooks, and actually traffic flow, which leads me to parking, which is always an interesting issue that comes up before the work group. And finally, external partners, you know, Tech Park, WTCC, MBTA, the National Park Service, and the Armory Square Daycare. Each of these groups, when they wanted to come back on campus, had to submit to the work group their plans for how to stay safe and to abide by not only our safety protocols, but also our campus attestation. the reason I give you this is to let you know what's involved in pulling this together, and it takes a village. So any questions on the repopulation plan or even human resources, I'd be delighted to answer.
So Dr. Tenney, I understand from an HR perspective of how hard it is to get systems together. I think it's, to the report of Eric and Francie early, really important, right, to get those together. I know it takes time. Appreciate you diving in. And also from the accountability perspective, right, meeting our hiring projections and getting people involved. So just thank you. I know there's been a lot on your plate since coming to us with COVID and a new team, but appreciate the report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no question. I just wanted to highlight that I appreciated that STIC, made an attempt to become a vaccination site. I know that access, is a huge issue, especially with the early on rollout of the vaccine and the fact that initially there was, we only had all the way up, Boston Road at the Eastport Mall as an access site. And so to see that STIC step forward and attempt to serve the surrounding community and create access for that was really awesome. So it's unfortunate it didn't work out, but thank you.
Thank you, but stay tuned. Things could change. We'll be adaptable. We'll turn on a dime if we get the opportunity to do so.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we're now going to move on to the academic affairs highlights and initiatives from Dr. DeBurley.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, thank you. All right, so that's the cover of the PowerPoint presentation. And we can go ahead and go to what we're covering today very quickly for you. You all have received a copy of the academic plan. And the point being that actually is a kind of a non-traditional document in the sense that we worked, we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide. We worked with a large committee this summer with 6 full-time faculty, and we met sort of June until the end of August and did a bit more work in September in pulling this together. But what we did was basically divide things up into areas that people worked on and then provided, although you have the narrative in the academic plan that you were sent as the sort of copy, and that's the slice as it was in October. What we are doing is that in the document itself, in the portal, the work plans themselves, which if you had a chance to look at the academic plan, for every area there's a work plan. Those are the work plan. Those work plans are being updated regularly onto the portal as work goes on. So consequently, the plan is dynamic, and that was the whole idea with the academic plan, which was to provide the ability to show people what progress is being made. I want to, of course, thank all the people who worked on the committee. So let's go on to the next slide. So again, the purpose was to go ahead and outline STIC's overall academic goals and how they'll be met. And we selected 10 areas which we'll look at. Again, the cross-campus committee. The plan itself is posted on the portal as a PDF, but if you have a chance to look at it, if you hit academic plan on the portal, you'll also see that the work plans are updated regularly and then they're dated so folks can see what the movement is. Not all the work plans are being worked on at the same time because we had 10 areas and we have only so many people can be in so many committees at the same time. However, in the plan itself, we also have it dated as to when we think we can get to these particular areas. And the academic plan itself also served to help generate some of the projections in the standards for the NETCHI self-study, in particular, the standards 2 for planning and evaluation, 4 the academic programs, 6 teaching, learning, and scholarship, and 8 looking at educational effectiveness. Okay, the next slide. So here are the 10 areas. And again, as I know you've received, you had a copy of the academic plan, and we're not going to go through all 10 areas. What I've done is just selected 3 in particular that to look at today, just on the goals and subtasks, just to highlight them. And again, as I said, the work plans themselves are constantly being updated. Well, let's say being updated about once a month. as progress is moving forth. So these are the areas that the committee that we looked at to see that we would wanted to be working on. And the first one there is improving equity and inclusion. So if we can go to the next slide, which pulls up the sort of goals and subtasks. Now, so much of what's going on right now impacts this part of the academic plan, because the equity audit, we're really looking at reevaluating sort of how we're doing, number one, on our faculty recruitment and what we can do to improve or increase the diversity of our faculty. But so much of this also would be helped by what we find out from the equity audit, which is in place. We also want to be looking at reevaluating developmental placements. And again, that's another section of another part of the academic plan. We've also looking heavily, of course, as in the STEM areas to increase opportunities for students in STEM and in competitive programs. So that in that sense, we also look at the pathways that we have for our students to help them through that. And so in sort of looking at the pathways that we have is another section of the academic plan itself. So many things in a sense intersect in the different areas. And of course, so much of what we're doing too in particular is looking how to increase and improve the opportunities for our students and for our faculty and staff. Let me go on to the next one, which is looking at early college. Again, 80% of our students come from the Springfield area. And of course, big feeders are the Springfield schools. So what we've looked at and what we've implemented are, rather than a sort of cafeteria model of students doing dual enrollment and basically taking random courses, we're really working with the schools in particular right now with Commerce and also with Westfield to create pathways for students. And in turn, we also have an agreement with Commerce, so we are actually receiving 50% of the tuition to help offset the cost of these students attending. But we're working very closely. We have, of course, our Director of Early College Initiatives, Pam Westmoreland, working very closely with Commerce, basically on a weekly basis to create pathways for students, working with the students individually, working with the Commerce folks, and also in the empowerment zone to connect and provide supports so that we can help students with to achieve success. We've also created first-year experiences for the students, and we have pathways looking at 10th, 11th, and 12th and senior students to provide that, as well as getting them involved for those who are interested in the non-credit opportunities for high school students through our workforce development programs. Okay, next one. This is the last one I'm going to be looking at, and I had referred to Pathways to Success. And this is deep dives really, which have already taken place, looking, number one, at our students who are placed in either what we would call developmental programs in English and in math. And what we know is that students, they get placed into these courses and that there they languish. So we're really having a look at what we're offering and how we're able to help these students either through co-requisites to provide them opportunities so they can see their way out of the developmental courses. And consequently, so far, a lot of work has taken place over in the College of Liberal and Professional Studies, particularly with the humanities folks and looking at the English programs, and then also looking at the general, also in labs, looking at the general education courses. And Dean Greco, along with the faculty, have been looking at building perhaps a core semester so that as students arrive and they take the first semester, that they take a series of core courses that if they change their minds about what they want to do as far as their majors, which many of our students do, they won't lose the courses. They won't have lost time with the courses that they took in that first semester, because those first courses will really fit into multiple programs across campus. And the revisiting of the math developmental placements, that is to happen in the STEM school, and that will be a project that the people will be working on next year to again be looking at that. So we're looking at how long we know already how long people come into those courses, how long they sit there. We also know what their success levels are and what their graduation rates are, which are low. So we're really working very much through really the equity inclusion, through that agenda, but also looking at how we're delivering things and what the opportunities are to improve and to really provide a pathway to success for our students. Next slide is on an entirely different topic. So I'm just wondering if are there any questions on the very quick overview of the academic plan? For your reading pleasure, I know. This is just a quick paragraph to talk about the discussions again that have been going on for the last year, and the process for review of and to look at program sustainability. And the concept here, which you have just as in a paragraph, is really to develop a process to evaluate program sustainability, which provides the transparency that folks were most concerned about. And the criteria, again, has been listed here, looking at multiple criteria, of course, program and course enrollments, the capacity, retentions, completion, instructor-student ratios, the accreditation requirements, if any, because in some of our medical programs, our accredited programs, they're very strict student ratio requirements. What happens with employment, market needs, looking at what we have as competing programs, how current the curriculum is, looking at the facilities, delivery costs, and of course, marketing, and the advisory board recommendations from the programs to see what needs to be done. We're looking at creating this as a sort of ongoing group of people, a committee that would have representation from administrators in academic affairs and finance, as well as faculty, and that this group would meet over the year, looking at particular programs that have difficulties, and then to provide, using criteria, what is the situation and what is the status, so that we could there also keep the trustees informed of where we are, what the status of certain programs are, what's being done to mitigate, what can be done, but also what we have as far as research and marketing. Any questions about this? Okay.
I'll just augment on that last point. Trustees, obviously a forum like this will be invaluable for people to really have a deep dive into what is sustainable, especially when we know the enrollment trend has been very challenging. I want to offer my appreciation to Dr. DeBurley for helping set the framework. What I would offer is, just like AIA, it would be incredibly helpful to have a trustee liaison. Just as you have served that role, Trustee McDonald, it would be helpful to have a trustee, and it's good to have our board chair on here to give that some thought as well. I think going forward, having a trustee right there as part of this working group will be truly helpful. Again, we'll look ahead to how we sort of navigate those conversations.
And the last item really is just letting you know how busy we are with academic affairs searches and lots of committees for all of these. We're in the process right now. We've had an interim dean. Basically, this will be this June, end of June will be the end of a 2-year interim deanship. So we are in the process of conducting the STEM dean search. We're now in the process of the second round of interviews with candidates. We also, our AVP for Workforce had notified us of his resignation, although he's sort of helping us with the transition and staying on us as long as we need him until we can identify another AVP for Workforce, or until I guess he gets a better offer, I think. But at any rate, so that committee has been formed, and in fact, it met today and reviewed the applicant pool. So 9 candidates were selected to go forth into the initial round of interviews. We're also reinstating the assistant dean for LAPS, liberal and professional studies, that we had frozen last year with the COVID, but we're also adding an assistant dean for SHIPS. We do have an assistant dean for SHIPS who is the director of nursing, but her responsibilities are really consumed very much by nursing. And given all of the other issues and all of the other, the numbers of sort of activities and requirements compliance needs, accreditation issues, battles with some of our providers, etc. An assistant dean would be very, very helpful to Chris Scott. So we've commenced that search. We also have faculty positions, some of which were frozen last year with COVID, which we are now have posting for or about to post for. So most of these have been posted already, although fire science is yet to be posted. And I believe biomedical engineering technology will be posted in the next few days, but the rest have been posted. Many of these are openings as a result of retirements. And consequently, of course, as far as the budget implications, it's squared out. So I just wanted to give you an update on how busy academic affairs is going to be this term, because these are all searches that are going to be conducted in the next few months or in the process now. Any questions about the multiple postings? Oh, and I'm sorry, one more. The registrar has, she notified us already a year ago that she was retiring. So the registrar position, I didn't have it here because it hadn't been posted yet, but it has been posted. And that's, of course, a key position for the college. And that's what I have for you today.
Okay, thank you. We're now ready for the president's perspective.
I'll try to be brief. To the committee, I would say, I hope you join me in being so very proud of the deep dive across the college. I mean, on display clearly tonight is the work being done, and it's wonderful to sort of hold that out and spotlight that. Good to have one of our shared governance bodies here, our co-chairs from the All Unit Congress, and we, I believe, have meetings scheduled monthly now, April and May. So those conversations, trustees know, will continue, and we have a forum with administration and AUC leadership, which is helpful. I think you also know one of our other bodies, MCCC. I have what's called MACER, Management and Association Committee on Employee Relations, and I meet monthly with their leadership as well. So we are, I think, finding our way with these forums and these forums to have discussions. You know, when I think about student affairs and the spotlighting by our Vice President, Darcy Kemp, on students, I think it's been really powerful to sort of look ahead and see the work. And again, the tie, and you see to this question, I think, in the ether a little bit within the college about AIA and whether it is a sort of for real entity, if you will. Clearly, the Division of Student Affairs is really embracing that and pushing forward with that. When I look at human resources, I think the same holds true in the integration that you hear around the equity audit, anticipated efforts there, and our focus on employees and the campus and preparing ourselves for the fall. It was great to see that from Dr. Casey Senni. And of course, with Dr. DeBurley in academic affairs, there is no rest for the weary. Across the board, faculty, staff, and administrators in academic affairs have been at the core of so much this year. And you know, in some ways, with the personnel view that I was going to talk about, you see this lift now to sort of work to post and to get ourselves positioned with what is at core to us, which is the work of our people. So there'll be a lot of searches that are stood up, efforts to have people in place come September of the year ahead. And again, really pleased with the work coming out of academic affairs. Just a few other notes. On the personnel front, you'll see it was an item there. Just a few other items to add. You'll see the list that is shared with trustees. There are names on there, so we provide that to you confidentially. Obviously, personnel is an important conversation. We want to make sure that you are informed and up to date. Casey had mentioned that we did hire a director of human resources, John Harmon, and I know that will be a helpful add. And he has experience in education, in K-12 in particular, and also facilitating collective bargaining agreements. So that'll be helpful. There was also one in there, Akili Murchison, who has been our veterans counselor for a number of years, was promoted to a more broad-based, I believe, academic counselor position, where not only is she doing veterans work, but also more broadly working with our students. And I know that's been a real win-win for the college with a promotion like that. Not a lot of separations or retirements. This is a quiet time of the year for that, so there was no news there to really call out. We'll see if there are some retirements that formalize in the next few months. And you also see some part-time hiring, particularly for student supports. You'll see Blackboard, you'll see peer tutoring. So some of these supports we are trying to ramp up, certainly as we continue to stay remote and online with our instruction. One note around the faculty positions that Dr. DeBurley mentioned. Fire science, not a program that we talk about a lot. It kind of flies under the radar both within the college and sometimes quietly in our community. But it's a program that has never had a full-time faculty member. And yet it has about 45 or 50 students in it, full and part-time year over year. And a number of people who work in the fire field graduate from our program. It has typically been posed as a sort of evening program. And we are going to sort of try something where we post this faculty position. And by definition, according to our contract, a day faculty member is a full-time faculty member. So we're going to see how do we thread the needle, so to speak, trustees, where we try to bring a full-time faculty member in to give that core and see if there might be an arrangement where they might be able to perhaps teach an afternoon or certainly some of the online classes that we have developed now. But if they do teach in the evening, it may be that they end up teaching actually with an adjunct hat on. So we'll keep you appraised of that, but it certainly is an opportunity to try something in the name of investing in a faculty line. The tenure process you'll see listed on the agenda, it's more of a small note. We like to work these efforts through a committee, but because of the timing of the MCCC contract with tenure, we won't be able to hit internal, external with our tenure recommendations. So really this is all a note to say in April at the full board meeting, Madam Chair, on the 26th, you'll have the president's recommendations for tenure. I don't expect any surprises. Again, we meet with MCCC monthly, but also there's an entity called the UPPC, the Unit Personnel and Professional Committee. That is essentially like a peer group that first looks at their own colleagues and makes recommendations. There's a process underneath all that, but I'm obligated by the MCCC contract to make my recommendations to trustees by May 1st. So all that is to say, next year, I think internal external will align a little bit better where you'll have the tenure recommendations first, but this year we'll need to put them in front of the whole board. Last couple points as I sort of look around the landscape and think about all of our efforts to always reintroduce ourselves to our community as part of this internal and external work. I think about, across the board, we have a number of people with different positions who carry that community in their portfolio. I think about, Vice President Denise Hurst, who's on here, who has external affairs in her portfolio and all of the conversations she helps facilitate. We've got a great community conversation series that's taking place right now. Some of my own work that I try to add value to is getting closer to that idea of also being out in the community. So I've started attending the Mason Square C3 meetings on a regular basis, and C3 here in Springfield stands for Counter Criminal Continuum. It's sort of a more contemporary version of community policing and really holds community entities close and has conversations between police and these organizations. I know Trustee McDonald is familiar with the C3 model. Attending the Mason Square one I think is very valuable because, of course, the college is considered part of that broader community. And I think they have appreciated knowing they have the president right there trying to bring this type of information to them and also being a good listener. I also met today with the Greater Springfield Pastors Council and have been meeting individually with local bishops and reverends. And again, I think the faith-based community is also an opportunity for us to continue to remind and invest in a body who has conversations in their own right with the community and remind folks in the faith-based community about our affordability and our access. And I know those have been well-received conversations as well. Last point, WTCC. If you happen to ever listen to the college's radio station, I happened to catch it on Saturday night, and our own trustee, Maurice Lindsay, has had a long-time show with some others on Saturday evenings called Caribbean Culture. It was a bit of history this past Saturday because Trustee Lindsay had actually in 2016 interviewed Bunny Wailer of fame, Bob Marley and the Wailers. And he interviewed him when Bunny Wailer played in Hartford in 2016. And I was sort of I was in my car and I was listening. I was just kind of stunned by that poignant bit of history with our own trustee having a conversation with a very famous musician, all right here in our neck of the woods. So I'll leave you with that, in that sort of vein of the internal is the external, and I'm looking ahead to good days at the college. Thank you.
Thank you. Any old business? I don't know why I can't see anyone anymore. Hold on. Okay. Sorry. I think it was the view of the screen. No, any new business? Great. All right. We're set for our next meeting on Monday, May 3rd, 2021 at 5 p.m. Annette, can you take the roll call?
Yes. Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Mary Kate Murin,
Yes.
Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.